Chapter 9, 197. The Death Lord. Wilbur frowned. It was easy for undead creatures to appear in ancient tombs. However, the appearance of a Death Lord meant the tomb was an extraordinary one. Ryder sensed the deadly aura, so he stayed close to Wilbur. The creature was at least at the level of a peak ambiance level cultivator, so it matched Ryder's level. The terrifying part was any injuries caused by that creature, even if it was a tiny injury, would infect its victim with the aura of death. The victim would lose the will to fight and rot from the death energy, eventually becoming an undead. Basan activated a spell as soon as the Death Lord appeared. 5 stone giants appeared almost instantly after a long chant. Basan must be a sanctuary-level cultivator from the way he was able to summon 5 stone giants at once. Wilbur was not surprised at all because he inspected Basan with his spirit energy much earlier. He knew Basan was a sanctuary-level cultivator. However, he was unsure of which stage he was at. The spirit energy was not foolproof. Basan made the right choice to battle against the undead creature with spells. Ryder formed his battle axe while Wilbur summoned a thin sword. It was the weapon he gained from the leader of the Riverbank Blossoms. It had the indestructible attribute, so Wilbur decided to test its power and usefulness here. Suddenly, the Death Lord growled. It wielded the rusty longsword in hand. Then over 10 undead creatures appeared among the moving gray mist. The undead creatures were the same size as humans. They wore tattered armor, and they had all sorts of rusty weapons. There were also gray flames burning inside their skeletons. They growled and sprinted toward Basan and Goma at the front. However, Basan had 5 stone giants to protect him. The undead creatures instantly clashed with the stone giants. Basan looked calm. He emitted spiritual energy, manipulating the stone giants to battle against the undead creatures. The weapons of the undead creatures smashed the stone giants, causing pieces of stone to fall off it. However, the stone giants were powerful, shattering the bones of the undead with each attack. The stone giants had the upper hand against the undead creatures. However, there were over 10 undead creatures. A few of them got past the stone giants and lunged towards Wilbur and Ryder. Ryder stayed close to Wilbur. He played it safe with his solid combat skills against the undead creatures. Wilbur wielded his thin sword and sprinted toward a few of the undead creatures. He pierced through them. The thin sword was burning with spiritual flames. Each attack pierced through the undead creatures. However, the undead creatures were not alive. They would not be defeated unless they were taken apart. They had no fear or feelings, and they did not feel pain. Therefore, they still swung their weapons around when Wilbur pierced through them. Wilbur calmly fought them with his thin sword. The combat skills of the undead creatures were laughable when compared to his godly training form. They were not on his level. Basan turned to glance at Wilbur. He noticed the thin sword, and he looked surprised. Then there was a greedy look in his eyes. The stone giants shattered a lot of the undead creatures. They seemed to have the upper hand. An undead creature finally shattered and fell after taking more than 10 hits from Wilbur. Wilbur shook his head. The thin sword did not have an advantage against those creatures. With that in mind, he switched out the Thunder Cleaver.